everybody. Happy Tuesday. It's Tuesday, November 17th. And so I just wanted to, you might hear my grandbabies in the background. You may hear some holiday sounds. We've been watching holiday movies. It's that time of the year. So I'm not mad at them. But I'm going to play my intro. And first, let me tell you, we're going to be talking about list segmentation and keeping your data clean. I'm going to go through it really quickly, and I'm not going to hold you long today, and I'll be right back. Hey there. All right, I'm Tanya Jackson, creator of Nonprofits Get Connected. And the reason I created Nonprofits Get Connected is because I've been working in the nonprofit sector for over 15 years. And in the last few years, the IRS is, they're dishing out 501c3s left and right, hundreds per day. And what I'm finding as I look at that is a lot of people are getting their 501c3s, passionate about their mission, moving forward with their mission. But a lot of them are, they don't have systems in place for that back office, which is very important. So in October, I talked a lot about acknowledgement letters and tax receipts and thanking your donor. And that follows through consistently. I mean, you have to have that back office system set up for that purpose, because you can lose donors. You may have a lot of one-time donors. So today we're going to be talking about list segmentation, once you've built your donor list, and keeping your donor clean. So let me share my screen. All right. All right. List segmentation and top five ways to segment your data and keeping your data clean. Before I start, I want to ask you guys a question. Are you guys, is anyone sending out holiday cards to your donors? Hold on, let me unshare this for a moment so I can say this. Do you have a list? Do you have a list of donors that you're going to be sending holiday cards to? And that's a great opportunity to even, it has nothing to do with celebrating or what you're celebrating, but it's just a great gesture just to say happy holidays, because between now and the end of the year, you've got, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Christmas, you've got New Year's, you got all of these holidays that are falling into this one section. So it's not like, I always say happy holidays because I don't want to offend anybody in terms of what their beliefs are. So I just say happy holidays. But now is a great time to look at your list of people. And if you've got a card that you can send out to your donors, prospective donors, people that you've made connections with this year, it's a nice touch. You can go on Canva. You can go on Vistaprint, Zazzle. There's a lot of places you can go to you can do a postcard. You don't have to do a expensive folding card, but just do a postcard where, it just says thank you, for being you, happy holidays, something very simple. So that is a nice touch, especially at the end of the year. And, your donors, people that you've talked to, they'll appreciate that. So let's move on to our next slide. And let's see. Hold on. This always gets me, this sharing of the documents. So let me do this again. And I always have it down before I get on. And then when I get on, it just acts crazy. But here, so here we are. Let me start my slide. Okay. So list segmentation, top 5 ways to segment your donors. Now there's other ways to do this, but I'm just going to talk about these 5 right now. So new versus recurring donors. So of course that's a segmentation in itself, because you're going to be talking, you know, I would pull a list of all of my new donors. And when I say new donors, I would say people that have given to me this year, maybe they didn't give to me last year. They're totally new in my system. They're new to my nonprofit, and I want to talk to them in a certain way. And it's those, that's where you can capture them, especially with that card. That's where you can capture them, tell them a little bit about the organization, let them know that you see them, and send them a card. Also, in this list, when you're segmenting, your criteria would be, you know, maybe someone that hasn't, you know, their first gift was greater than 1/1/2020. So that means that their first gift that occurred this year. You might be on a fiscal year. So your fiscal years start July 1. So it just depends on what year you're on. Recurring donors are those donors that give over and over again. And what you want to do with them is you want to build in a list for recurring donors, donors that have given to you. They may have given $25 a year, which is awesome. I mean, it may not sound alike, but they're consistent and they're continuing to give. That's the group that you can now create a list and say, hey, I noticed, thank you for your last gift of $25. And would you be kind and generous and to increase your gift by, $5? So then they'll give, and that's how you work them into building that, increasing that donor. You already got them as recurring donors. Recurring donors could also be every month. They could be monthly donors. So you have someone that gives to you every month of the year. You may also use that same tactic with them and say, hey, would you consider increasing your donation by $30 a month? Or you can even say by $30 a year. It just depends on how you're tracking them. Annual giving levels and capacity. We talked about capacity last week. And this is an area where you're tracking, or you're pulling in your donors, where these are annual givers, give once a year, and you're looking at their capacity to give. So that capacity, as we discussed last week, is, are they homeowners? You're looking at their assets, you're looking at their ability and their capacity to give to your organization. There's ways to do that. And, if you have access to different types of software, you can actually research your donors, especially if they're into philanthropy. You can research your donors, and keep in mind that whatever information you find on your donors is totally confidential. It's totally confidential between you and your organization. It's not for you to spread to other people. It's basically, and the information has to be used in such a way where you're talking to the donor from where they're at. So if you're looking at their capacity to give, their assets, they have trust, they have property, they have all of these things. Now, here's the thing. A lot of people are wealthy in assets. They may not be wealthy in cash. So you do have to be careful with that, because you can own a $250,000 home, but your income may be 60, 70,000 a year and you've got good credit. So you do have to look at the full person and their capacity to give. You want to also look at what type of gifts have they given to other organizations and how much have those gifts been. You can actually look up donors and find that information out. So that's another segmentation. So when I say segmentation, these are lists. So these are, right now I'm talking about 5 different lists that you're going to be looking at. The next is communication method. So now you want to pull your donors and you want to determine how do they like to be communicated with. Do they give online? Do they mail in a check? What's their preferred method of giving to you? And so once you determine that, like if you've got a lot of online givers, once you determine that, okay, now's the time to use your email system and do email blasts, because these are online people and they like being online. So they'll check their emails, they'll give through those portals. Then you also have another communication method. You have people who still write checks. They may not be online as much. So you want to have a direct mail piece that you may want to send out to them. So those are segments. You're segmenting these are my direct mail people. These are my email people. A lot of organizations are now moving into email. And that is because a lot of the companies that these donors work at, or these prospective donors work at, are requiring them to be online anyway. And now that we're in a pandemic, more people have been moved to the online space. So you absolutely want to have an email blast for your donors. And this is not just during the holidays. This is all year long for whatever campaign or appeal that you're doing throughout the year. You want to get your donors used to seeing those emails and sending them the emails. The 4th segment is event attendees. And you can query them, or hopefully you've been keeping track of all your event attendees. And when you're keeping track, you want to have their name, address, telephone number, and email, at least. If you're not collecting any other information off of your donors or your event attendees, you should at least have those things. And event attendees are people who like to attend events. You have some donors who will only attend your events. They may not give a regular donation, but they will give a donation at your event. So you want to segment those people out. You're going to talk to them in a way where you're thanking them for attending your annual gala, and which you consider giving a year-end gift to our organization. And in that, and you're probably going to reach these people by email, because that's probably how they signed up for the event. It's rare now that people have paper tickets in their hand. So people are doing this online. So this is a space that you want to be in. The 5th one, potential matching gift donors. Now, this is a absolutely huge space that a lot of nonprofits, this is where they leave money on the table. And in their communication with donors, prospective donors, some people don't ask that question. You could slip that in anything, in everything that you send out, telling them, did your employer match gifts? Check with your HR department to see if your employer will match your gift. That's money that's been left on the table. And there are companies out there that will match donations 3 to 1. So imagine if your donor gave $1,000 and then they went to their company and say, hey, I gave $1,000 to this organization. And then the organization says, we'll match that 3 to 1. You're going to get another $3,000 from that company's, from that donor's organization. Even if it's $100 and it's a match, some of them will match 2 to 1. That's an additional $200 that you're getting. An additional 100. Every little bit helps. But this is an area where a lot of organizations are leaving money on the table because they're not asking this question. And sometimes employees may not even know that their employer does a match. You know, they could have been with that company for years and years. And most times companies will do that when they're onboarding an employee. They'll tell them about, these are the different things that we do. And we, if you give to a nonprofit, we'll match it. A lot of them don't, but a lot of these Fortune 500 companies, they will do that. They do matches. And it's, once you can ask your donor if their company matched, they go ask their company. Every time they give a gift, they're going to make sure that they are getting this match. They love to do that because now they're looking at, I'm maximizing my donation. And, they love the idea that if I can give $100 and then in return for my efforts, they're going to get another $300. And that $300 is going to be attributed to that donor. They love that. So always ask your donors, does your company match gifts? And you may not just like blatantly say that, but put it somewhere in your correspondence to them. It could be like, when I would do acknowledgement letters in the past, I would put in there would be a statement at the bottom, does your company match donations? Check with your HR department or check with your company to see if they match gifts. Because some donors, they don't know and they don't understand the process. So they don't ask unless you are asking them, and then they'll go ask their employer, and then they'll find out, wow, my company matches gifts. I could have been doing this for a long time. So that is list segmentation, the top 5 ways to segment your donor list. There's multiple ways to segment your donors. I think when I first started doing this in October, I mentioned that I had worked for a large organization, a foundation, and our list segmentations, I would have 49 to 50 segmentations every appeal we did. And that meant those were all different letters that were being sent out. But we had a huge database, almost 400,000 people in the database. And about 45,000 of those donors were actually active donors that were actively giving. So we had all these different segments. Now if you got a smaller database, you might not have that many segments, but it's just good that these are 5 that you should consider when, different ways that you're talking to your donor. All right. So the next part is keeping your donor data clean. That's a tongue twister. All right. So one of the ways is to identify duplicates. And this happens not by fault of anyone, but it can happen because sometimes you have people who have the same first and last name. And the only way that you can identify them being different is either it could be by their address, and even then they could have moved. So what you want to do is you want to take your list and you want to sort it in such a way where you're sorting by different, you may sort by last name, first name, and then address. You may sort by phone number. Look for ways that you can really distinguish that, no, this is not the same person. Okay, because what can happen, you could be talking to one John Smith and meant to talk to another John Smith, and then that John Smith you're talking to is like, I never gave you guys a gift, I'm not sure. It's embarrassing, So you want to do, this is something that you want to do. You may set up to do this, and all of these things that's on this list, you may set up to do these things once a week, twice every 2 weeks, or once a month. But just do it. Make sure that you do it and have a system for doing it. Now, the other thing is doing audit. What audit queries are is if I find an issue in a database and I think that this is going to be an issue that could come up often, I create a query that with that particular issue that'll pull up that issue whenever it happens. So all I have to do is I have to run that query and it'll pull up donor records that have this issue on it. For instance, let's say my salutation is missing off of the record. So I can create a query saying basically, give me all the donors that has a missing salutation. And I can pull that query every week or, whenever I want to, because I've built a query. And if I just think about it, I'll just pull that query. So you can pull that query and it'll pull up all the donors that has a missing salutation. You can then just click into those in, okay? Because you want to have the salutation. So that's what, or you can set up alerts if a particular thing happens as you're putting in a record or a record is in your database. You can have alerts to let you know there's an issue here, or you forgot to add this, or you got to send out this email to this person. You got to set up those alerts, because as you grow and get bigger and bigger, which you will, these things are going to be important to have in place, because you're not going to remember every single thing on every single donor. All right. Prune and active, I missed the T, prune and active contacts. So what that means is you have to determine what is inactive in your database. And inactive means people who probably haven't given to your organization in a certain amount of time. You have to determine what that time is. I generally say 3 or more years. Some people say 5 years. Some people never mark people inactive. But in order to keep your data clean, what could happen if you're not looking at those donors or constituents, because they're probably used to be donors. If you're not looking at those constituents, what you're going to find yourself doing is constantly contacting someone who's apparently not interested in your organization anymore. And that's a hard fact to face, but sometimes you have to face that I haven't heard from this person in 4 years. They haven't given a donation in 4 years. They haven't responded to any emails. They haven't attended any events. And at some point, that's a hard fact to face, that, okay, this person should be marked inactive because they're not responding to anything. Now, here's what happens. Let's say, for instance, that person decides to give. After 5 years, someone's talked to that person, or they've looked up their information. They've looked up your organization, and they found that, I want to give to them again. Well, that's a good thing, because now if they are marked inactive, once they give again, you can mark them active again. And one of the things that you can do with that is once you mark them active again, then they go back on your list. They go back on your solicitation list. They go back on your thank you list. They go back on, they become active again. So the next step, and I did a really bad job with this. I'm sorry, I'm just really picky about this kind of stuff. Obviously, I wasn't too picky this time, but I'm gonna go back and correct it. One of the things you can do is eliminate junk contacts. Junk contacts are people who may have signed up for your email list, or let's say they attended a one-time event, maybe they came with someone to an event. They have no interest in your organization. What happens is then they're taking up space in your database, and the space that they're taking up is There's, like we started out in October, there's some organizations that will charge you per the number of constituents you have in your database. So that person is probably, just signed up just because they attended an event, and because your event required you to get an email, they signed up. Never will have any participation in anything you're doing with your event, or anything like that. And so you want to go through and clean that up. Sometimes you may even add people to the database that you didn't even mean to add, or sometimes you may get a list from somebody and you got a list of people and they're like, then you ended up adding these people to your database with no plan in place to actually even contact these people. And so now you're just adding a lot of data into your database that's kind of junky and funky and all of that. So you want to clean that up. This is a big one. Train your users. Training your users is probably I probably should have put it at the top, is probably the first line of where you should be in terms of keeping your data clean. Because if you train a person on how the data should go in, then that decreases the amount of errors that's being put in the system. You create a standard for them to put information in, and they're trained on the database and how the database is set up. That's key, and that's very important. And then the last thing is standardize at point of entry. So what I mean by that is, I think I spoke about this in October also, but what I mean about this is when you standardize at the point of entry, that means, for salutations are always this way. It's just the first name. Primary addressee is always first name of the two. If it's John and Jim, then it's John and Jim Johnson. That's a standard. That's standardized. That means that everybody that goes in the database, or the primary addressee is first and last name, the salutation is just first name. So that's standardizing how your information is going into the system. You do this with phone numbers. What's your standard format for phone numbers? Do you add the area code and the number, which I think nowadays you have to, because everybody's got cell phones. And some phone companies will even let you choose the area code that you want your phone in. So that means, if you don't have the area code, you don't know where that person, that you don't know how to dial that number to reach that person, because you don't have the area code. So area code would be a standard. Now, when you're adding a telephone number, another standard is, do I put the parentheses around the area code, or do you just put the numbers in? All of that's standard, because one thing that you want to do, you want your database will look the cleanest if it's consistent. And that means if the data looks consistent. So that means that, one person, you're putting in all the numbers in one line. And I've seen this, 312, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, no dashes, no parentheses. Then you're putting in parentheses around the area code, and then you're putting in 1, 2, 3 dash 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. That's another way to do it. So then when you start looking at your database, you start pulling your list, it looks junky because you get all these different formats. So that's how your data looks clean, when it's consistent and all the information is consistent. When it's not consistent, you may have good data, but it looks junky because you got all different formats for first name. You got all different formats for the primary addressee. You got all different formats for your phone numbers, and you've got all different formats of how you're putting the notes in, all this. So standardizing how your data, like when you're putting in your donor, standardizing that process is key into making your data look clean. So that is it for today. And I want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you in December. I will not be coming on next week because it's a holiday week. I want everyone to enjoy your time off, be safe, and wear your mask. Let's get this COVID thing under control. I know I'm here in Chicago, and we are in the midst of another shutdown, but they warned us, and it's flu season, cold season, and they warned us that we get another surge, and we are. So I want everybody to be safe and love on your family. Those that can't be with your family, try to get on a Zoom. For those that have lost family members, I pray for you guys. Pray for everyone that have lost a loved one through this horrible pandemic. And I will see you all in December. Love you. Take care and have a great holiday.